An update for you on Nanox today. I watched the Oppenheimer Nanox presentation earlier this morning, so I wanted to share with you what Mr. Polyakin, their CEO, had to say and my take on it. All right, the first thing Rand did was just give an overview of the company. Just quickly, Nanox is trying to meet a need in areas where medical imaging capability is underserved. They have a new tube that they have developed, an X-ray tube that makes this much cheaper, and they're putting that into this NNOX.ARC, which is sort of like a CT scan, but actually much different. And they're using a business model to disrupt the way that medical imaging goes. He touched upon their progress since their IPO back in August. Of course, they raised $190 million back then through that. In September, they signed some agreements with a company in Mexico to deploy in Mexico and Guatemala. These units, again, pending regulatory approval. October, they made a deal with Ambra Health to enable image access in the United States. That is on the IT end. In December, of course, at RSNA, they demonstrated their product. I did a video about that. The images were less than I expected initially, but my further thought process is that this is a company that is a work in progress, and so will allow them to have some images that are not quite up to par for what most radiologists are going to want to read right now. In January, they made a deal with USA Rad to provide second opinion. Of course, the head of USA Rad was one of those radiologists at the RSNA demonstration in Israel. He's closely associated with this company. You'll see him on some of the videos on the Nanox website. So that seemed like a natural extension that they would make a deal with USA Rad for that. In January, they made some leadership additions to their company, and then in February, they did complete a secondary offering. That was not money that went to Nanox. There were some early on investors who wanted to sell their shares, and essentially those got converted over to institutional investors buying up the shares. So just a change of hands, but no additional money went to Nanox. He talked about their tube, their Nanox tube, and what makes that innovative and really kind of revolutionary in medical imaging. I'm not going to talk about that today because I've covered that on previous videos, so you can watch those. He also talked about their Nanox.ARC. This is what they will deploy those X-ray tubes in. This little arc here will fit 5 to up to 11. I've seen tubes within this. It's not going to be as good as a CT scanner, but it can produce images near that quality using some computer work. He touched upon their RSNA demonstration. Of course, at that demonstration, he took a picture of his hand that they then compared to William Röntgen's wife's hand, a kind of a classic picture in radiology. He talked about the 2D images versus 3D images. There's our tomosynthesis images, what they're producing now. And quite honestly, in my opinion, radiologists are not going to want to read tomosynthesis images of a chest. All right, on to the new stuff. So the Nanox.ARC is in production. So he had some pictures of it in production. So that confirms the previous picture that I put out from Twitter that somebody had sent out showing at least one of these in production. Now we see at least multiple. He said they're doing 1,000 of these. Now they're going to put them together in a factory in Israel. Because of the pandemic, it's a little difficult to get to other countries. You know, the people who go to travel have to be in quarantine, so getting there to see these things in production is difficult. So they're having all the parts shipped into Israel and building them in a factory there now. We're looking again at 1,000 of these being produced. He said 900 of them are going to be shipped around the world for actual use, and it sounded like the other 100 were going to be more for regulatory clearance. All right, I said we'd touch upon the medical screening as a service model. This is a different way of doing business in the radiology world. Essentially, the places who acquire these imaging devices will not need to put up the capital expenditure. Nanox will be providing the capital to fund these devices in place. In turn, the centers will agree to a minimum number of scans. Currently, that's going to be 7, and Nanox is expecting that they'll do 20. Now, he did talk about the total fee being $40 for this. Nanox will be getting 14 of that, and that $40 is supposed to include the radiologist fee for reading the images. That is a bargain for medical imaging. He touched upon their Nanox cloud. I don't see this so much as anything more than what's already being done. Essentially, the imaging devices will not be in the same location as the radiologist. Those images will go over the internet to where radiologists will read them and send them back a report. I do that every day. All right, what everyone really wants to know about is regulatory clearance. When is that going to happen? Okay, just to recap, they submitted their initial 510K clearance in January of 2020. Of course, that goes to a third-party reviewer. If you're not familiar with that process, watch one of my previous videos and I explain that. That took a long time to get through, but at the end of 2020, the third-party reviewer was recommending that the device be cleared. That then goes on to the FDA, who makes the final decision. The FDA asked for more information in January, and the company has provided that information on March 2nd. So we're still waiting for the clearance, but in the question and answer session, Mr. Polyakin felt like they had completely answered all of the questions to a very professional level, and he expects the device to be cleared. When that will happen is really not known. COVID-19 really has caused a wrench in the works for FDA clearances. And Nanox is not the only company that is suffering from this. I know that there were people who were concerned that this process was taking so long when usually in the past it has gone through much quicker. But other companies are dealing with this as well. Endra was one that I've done a video on. They're dealing with delays. And even the one that I did a video on yesterday, Transmedics, has had some issues trying to get FDA approvals and committee meetings done, etc. Now, he did talk about that the multi-source device, the 510K clearance application, has not even been submitted yet still. He expected, though, that once that does get submitted, that they would have clearance within 4 months after the submission. They're still waiting on this single-source FDA clearance. He touched upon the contracts that they already have now. Many of these are done deals, of course, pending regulatory clearance, but these are firm contracts. So in Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Brazil, Mexico, Guatemala, Italy, Russia, South Africa, Taiwan, Singapore, Spain, and Belarus, pending clearance, these are done deals to put these units in there. So they already have 5,150 of those units where they have signed contracts. Of course, they're only making 1,000 initially right now, so you can see they're still going to have to ramp up. They have less than set-in-stone agreements for the United States, Korea, and Vietnam. Finally, before the question and answer session, he just talked about what the 2021 outlook looks like. They're really concentrating on trying to ramp up so that when they have clearance, they are ready to get these devices shipped. And that includes building out the supply chain. That includes still getting regulatory approvals. That includes infrastructure, that includes training so that the clients who will be using these devices will understand how to use them and be ready to go. That includes developing new pipelines and expanding partnership network. And essentially all he said on that is we're talking to everybody in the business. I've already covered much of what was discussed in the question and answer session. One additional thing that I haven't talked about is the factory that they're building in Korea. He said that they've put $40 million into this to acquire the land and develop clean rooms and the equipment, to procure the equipment. And that factory is being built now. He expects it to be done in November of 2021. He talked about they already do have capacity for thousands of units in Japan, but the need for much higher capacity, we already showed that they have 5,000 contract units. He expects that as this device gains in popularity, that they're going to need far more, and so they're ramping up to be able to meet that demand. All right, that's it for Nanox. What did we get out of it? We know that FDA clearance is still pending. We know that they're ramping up. We've actually seen more units now in production. Love to continue to see more of those. And we know that they have a factory being built in Korea that can be able to supply demand for the parts for their NNOX.ARC. I'm still excited about it. I'm still on board with it. I still think, though, ultimately that their cash cow is going to be their X-ray tube, at least initially. If they will license that tube, they can make a killing. All right, that's it. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up, and we'd love to have you subscribe. Get the young people in your life investing. It's a great way to educate them about finance, about saving, about the value of money. So many things they can learn from investing. So get the young people investing. Until next time, enjoy your investing.